Hey everyone, well you can see I made some more progress here on the O-gauge switching layout. In the previous video all I did was get some of the basic framing done for the top part of the layout, but in this video I'll show you how I got all the baseboard framing done, everything painted up and ready for installing track and wiring. So let's take a look. So again, in the previous video, I just basically showed how I got some of the wood cut, kind of got you an idea of what everything was going to look like in terms of the size. I did get this top part installed to the shelf up here, and so that was pretty much ready to go. The trim was put on, but nothing was painted. And so I started out basically by painting everything on the backdrop and getting the baseboard put together and painted as well. And this is just actually painted drywall. I'm not going to have any permanent or sort of formal backdrop for now. This entire part of the layout can actually just slide right out. It's sitting on a shelf. And so I can remove the baseboard and then get to the back wall, change the backdrop, and then slide this back in if I want to change it up. So that's the plan for now. And so I just have it painted blue, so it's a sky color. And then later on I can decide if I want to actually do some type of printed backdrop or whatever. But I'm not going to worry about that until everything else is done. But again, because I can slide this right out, it's very easy to go ahead and put a different backdrop up at some point later on in the future. So anyway, let's take a look at what I did to get to this point. So I started out by removing the lighting that is here on this layout. That's just basically held on by two screws, each of the two light fixtures. So I took those off and then I mixed up some of my various blue latex paints that I have to get sort of a nice light blue sky color. And then it was just a matter of painting the entire sides, the back wall, and the underside of the top of the layout that light blue color, so everything was kind of a uniform sky color. I came back and then painted on a satin black paint for the top trim, and then reinstalled the lights, and that part of the project was ready to go. So next it was time to get the actual baseboard of the layout framed up. So all I did was use some 1x2s to add some more structure to the entire frame. So I have a piece of 1x2 going along the back edge of the layout, and then various cross members coming through from back to front along the length of the layout. Now I marked on the base where I wanted to drill holes for feeder wires for the track, and so I essentially just put the cross members in between those areas where I plan to drill holes, so I wouldn't have to drill a hole right through one of the cross members. And so the spacing is kind of random. I try to have, enough cross members to have a strong structural base for the layout, but they're just basically placed wherever there's not going to be a hole drilled down from the layout top. And so overall, just a matter of screwing those in from the top as well as from the sides, and everything was pretty straightforward for building this very simple baseboard for this project. I then just put it on the shelf where I plan to have it permanently in place, and then screwed on the 1x4 fascia to the front of the layout. And I just used two screws where every one of those cross members were to hold it up in place. Again, I can just remove the screws, take off that piece of fascia if I need to get to the wires, but I can also reach up from underneath if I want to do it that way, since the shelf that it's sitting on doesn't come to the full front edge of the layout base. I can either remove the front fascia or just reach up from underneath, whatever is easier, or I can just pull the whole thing away from the wall, turn it upside down, work on the wires that way. So it makes it pretty convenient since it isn't permanently attached, and I can just remove it anytime I want to work on wiring or track work or whatever before I have, the structures and formal scenery done, which kind of makes that a little bit more dangerous. So once I had that framing done, I went ahead and painted the base a nice brown color. So when I get to track work and scenery, I'll have something that's just not the bare plywood color. It also helps to seal the plywood a little bit, so when I start adding a bunch of glue and water and things like that to adhere things, I won't have to really worry as much about any warpage or things like that. And then I just painted the front bottom trim of the layout that same satin black color. And I'll come back eventually and add a second coat to this at some point in the future, but I'm not going to do that until I actually finish the scenery work on the layout, since I'll probably get glue or other paints, on the trim anyway. And so once everything is wrapped up in terms of the layout, then I'll come back and add a second coat of paint to make everything look a lot nicer and cleaner once all the other work is complete. So anyway, with all that done and let everything dry, I put the track kind of just laid out here on the bench, and so I can kind of see again where I want to have all the wires go. So I'm not going to actually permanently install the track until I get all the wires kind of fed up and through the base of the layout and in place, so I can get all those wires attached to the rails, and then solder everything up so everything is nice and securely attached in terms of the wiring. Make sure all the joints are good, all that kind of stuff. Make sure everything is pretty much bulletproof in terms of the track. Now that's a little bit easier in O gauge than it is in N scale because, you know, a tiny little misalignment in N scale can mean derailments, whereas in O scale, a little bit less likely to occur, but obviously you still want to get everything perfect so you don't ever have to worry about cars derailing and things like that. So that will be the next video, is getting the track and the wiring installed, and then we can test out some trains and see how everything works. But anyway, that's all for this video, and thanks for watching. Bye.